Hello, subscribers. Charlie Specht here in downtown Buffalo outside U.S. Bankruptcy Court, where we just had our third round of impact statements with the Diocese of Buffalo. The first few rounds were survivors of sexual abuse in the Diocese of Buffalo. And today, you had Catholic parishioners being allowed to give statements about how this has impacted them. So let me just start off here by addressing there was a lot of speculation, rumors flying last night that Father Joe Gatto, who's the subject of our recent story, accused of sexual misconduct with multiple men. Um, Even though he denies that, he was rumored to possibly be speaking in bankruptcy court, which would have, you would assume, be responding to comments that were made accusing him of having something to do with recent death of someone um, who died by suicide. Gatto did not speak today, so not sure if that scuttlebutt was not accurate or if someone kind of thought better of this. And you have to imagine, though, if he had showed up, that the survivors would have been very upset. So what was said? Judge Buckeye started out sounding pretty defensive uh, in court and saying that he only allowed to agree to have the survivors be heard if other people could be heard as well, if everyone could be heard. So he used the term parishioners and anyone who felt aggrieved in any fashion. Now, the first couple times we had these court hearings, he cited a Bible verse, I believe it's from Ephesians, saying that is a time to speak, there is a time to listen, that sort of thing. This time he did not cite the Bible. He cited the due process clause of the U.S. Constitution, which frankly seems more appropriate for a federal judge. So he wanted to make that statement again and again that his court, he said, this is an open court, and this is a place where we let everyone a chance. We give everyone a chance to speak. So that was different. That was unusual based on what we've seen before with this kind of thing. So then we get into it with parishioners. So parishioners talked about what they call the devastating impact that some of the restructuring and these church closings have had on them. One of them, I'm going to quote here. He said, "We must find a way to honor the victims without destroying the Catholic faith in Buffalo." So a lot of these were, you know, men and women who are involved in the appeals of their churches being closed by Bishop Fisher, who was in attendance. Many of these advocates cited canon law, actually trying to use the church's kind of internal legal system against it. One of them said that the bishop made these church closures rashly, hastily, and unfairly, and that there were fundamental flaws and with canon law. Now, sometimes you can learn more about what a judge is thinking or how they might rule by the kind of questions they ask. So I thought it was interesting today that Judge Buckeye, after these parishioners spoke, said he asked about whether they felt parish funds should be restricted, and that's important because Judge Buckeye made a ruling about the funds for Christ the King Seminary, essentially saying that funds that had been specifically earmarked for the seminary could not be, or for specific purposes at the seminary, could not be used and swept into a settlement by the diocese, even though the seminary is no longer in existence. It's been closed, it's been sold. So that was interesting. If he makes a similar ruling here with the parishes, that could really scuttle this bankruptcy settlement. That would, you'd have to really wonder where the diocese is going to come up with that money for this settlement. I wonder if they'd have to do some sort of appeal, almost like they do for Catholic Charities. I don't know, a real fundraising effort. Um, so that was interesting. And let me just go through my notes here. Um, Other Catholic parishioners. So the was used in court, and I know it really upset some victim survivors. a couple of them who got up and walked out of the courtroom. We had, and the church people are very kind of well-meaning people. They're good people. They seem like good people. But one of them had said, "We are victims too in this. The churches have been made victims too." That's language that survivors of rape don't want to hear about. Oh, I'm a victim because I have to pay money. Um, that's different from being graphically sexually assaulted as a child. That didn't go over well with survivors. The word abused was also used. That didn't go over well either. I will say though that those words kind of came through at the end. Most of the speakers did say, "Look, there's nothing that can repay the survivors, and we're not saying the survivors shouldn't get funds." There was kind of a broad spectrum of opinions here from different Catholics. One of them, I believe she was an official at St. Mark's Church in North Buffalo, and said something to the effect of, "Yes, we are going to have our money taken, and we are going to have to contribute something, because if we don't contribute, where do where does it come from? How do the victims get made whole?" And she's right, essentially, because the only real revenue stream of Catholic Church is its parishioners. Um, so that was interesting. You also had another Catholic, same kind of sentiment. You wonder if maybe the diocese had asked some of these people to speak, which they could. This guy said, "It's our duty to pay this. The money has to come from somewhere." But basically, look, it's not fair, but this is what needs to happen to get through this bankruptcy. And terms were used like to get beyond this, to move beyond this. Again, those are terms not really appreciated by survivors, because it makes it sound like it's more of a PR problem rather than a fundamental existential kind of crisis that many believe it to be in the Catholic Church. Um, and it's also, frankly, easier for someone at St. Mark's Parish in North Buffalo. Is a very moneyed parish, always going to probably be, a wealthier parish. It's easy for them to contribute, obviously, than it is for some of these parishes in Our Lady of Bistrica and Lackawanna. It was a woman who made, I believe she was a business manager, made a pretty compelling case for why that parish serves the Croatian community. And that, um, not only that, but there's even, I believe she said, yeah, I believe she said that um, there's Franciscan priests who are assigned there. So you're not even using a diocesan priest. And why can't we just keep this open, and folding it into OLV is not going to be the same thing. Um, and because of specific outreach they do with the Croatian community, getting into such details um, as like roasting a lamb that the Croatians like to do. And how could we do this at OLV? There's no space. So I commented to Jay Tokaz, and I recommend you read his. I'm sure he'll have an article up today, but from Buffalo News, I commented to him that it's a weird thing, because we're sitting in U.S. Bankruptcy Court, and that's now become the forum for addressing church closings or debating church closings. It strikes me that the diocese mismanagement of not just the sex abuse crisis, but the church closing process, and the fact that it was so unpopular, not just because churches need to be closed, but really the lack of transparency and the rushed nature of how they did things. There was more evidence of that coming out. There was apparently many misspellings in the church closing documents that were just sort of, they're small things, but it's embarrassing. And it gives the impression, as one of the speakers said, that the diocese was really rushing things as they did this. But unfortunately, I said, one of the survivors, it creates a situation, because of the diocese handling of this entire thing and the church closing process. It gives it creates a situation where you're pitting people against each other. You're pitting Catholics who are active Catholics against survivors of sexual abuse, who, I should remind you, were almost all Catholics. So you're pitting Catholics against Catholics here. by the diocese, and a lot of people really don't, appreciate that, and it's an unfortunate situation. Um, there was no real. I was sitting there thinking, wow, these are interesting facts with the church closing process that I'm hearing for the first time. That wouldn't it have been great if there was a true public forum? Wouldn't it have been great if some of these people would have been able to make these appeals or speeches to the bishop, and it could have been covered by the media? None of that happened. This was all done by Father Brian Zeleneski, who is in charge of this quote unquote road to renewal program. And Zeleneski I don't know if he's, been taken off screen here, but he hasn't been with the bishop at any of his um, recent events or in court here. We did see also, as far as who we saw in court, we saw Father Greg Zeffel, close friend of Father Joe Gatto, also there again. Saw Diocese PR guy Greg Tucker. Diocese attorney Steve Donato was there. He did not show up to any of the survivor statements, but he was here today, and he did get a little point in at the end saying that the 80% figure on on parish contributions has been decreased. Made that appeal to Judge Buckeye, or made that statement rather. But again, it's such a weird situation because this has been in that this is now in bankruptcy court, where these are really two separate. I hesitate to use the word separate. They're related, but they're also two different processes: process of church closings and then sexual abuse. And if you listen to everyone in that courtroom today who spoke, um, they both appear to have been mishandled by the diocese, and they've created the situation now where you've got a federal judge, Judge Buckeye, who's sort of hearing appeals as if he's like an appeals court for church closings, which is just really bizarre. It's not something that I think is very common. I'm not an expert on bankruptcy in Catholic Church, but I think that this is a kind of situation that um, probably they didn't intend for. But it is a situation that we find ourselves in, and that these survivors and parishioners, it's unclear kind of how it's going to work out, where things go from here. Um, did notice that one of the she's not a survivor, but she's a someone who came to the previous round of victim impact statements, Catholic, and has advocated for the removal of Father Gatto, who said to the church people, "Hey, it was great that you were here. You have a right to speak. Would have been great if you were here for all the survivor statements as well." So if they do wish to do that sort of thing, and maybe they feel bad for missing it, there is an opportunity tomorrow. On Thursday, the survivors are going to have another impact statement. I believe that's the final one. And Judge Buckeye noted that he's going to, be making some sort of a decision on various motions that were filed. This continues to drag along. I don't want to say with no end in sight. There is an end in sight, but it's continues to be hazy as far as how this is all going to work out. So, as we make sense of this, I probably will be writing about this as well as doing this video. But thank you for following. And please, if you haven't, I really appreciate it if you consider a subscription to my Substack. It's charliereports.substack.com. Thanks.